welcome to the Damp Show. Today we're interviewing an interesting lady called Alison Cooper. And if you think that it's a recognisable second name, like myself, it's because she's my sister, and she's had an interesting career, and she's going to tell us all about it, from being at school all the way through to curating at the Cooper Art Gallery and everything in between. So, on with the show. Whatever you do at school, or whatever kids do at school, that not necessarily what you're going to do when you get on a bit later on in life. So there's 55-year-old people rolling about in life, and they still don't want to be doing what they're doing. They're still looking for a better job. So what we say is, how can you ask a 16-year-old to choose what he wants to do when there's 55-year-old people in life that don't know what they want to do either? So what we'll do is we'll start with a few questions, and then we'll get conversation going, Alison. And we'll start with, which school were you at, and how did you get on results-wise?
We went to St Michael's Catholic School, which was next door to St Helens.
I went there as well, didn't I?
Yeah, St Helens School, which was a bad...
2 years younger than Alice.
No,
I was a year, wasn't I?
Yeah.
I am 2 years younger, but I was a
You're
year
not
below.
really 2 years.
A year and a half.
Yeah, 13 months to be exact.
Yeah. So I'll just stop you there. How old were you when you first met me then?
I would have been...
I was 3 when I first met her, Alison.
Yeah, I would have been 13 months old.
Yeah.
13 months.
Yeah. And what were your first memory of me?
I can't remember.
There you go. That memorable. So just carry on with school.
Yeah, so we went to school, didn't we? And it was next door to St Helens, which was a nightmare for Protestant and Catholics at that time of... in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, it definitely was.
Every night were a nightmare. Finishing school, and there was constant fights. Anyway, did all right at school. I was a good sports person. I was in most teams. Netball.
Before we get into this, because on my last podcast, I don't want to say last podcast because they might not be in order, but on one of the previous podcasts or ones that's going to be coming up, I tell a story about when we were young, and I've never asked you what your thoughts were, and it was when that house blew up in front of us. Yeah. So I just remember waking up and my mum crying on the toilet, and
I remember it a bit differently because we shared a room, and I remember I must have been awake because I remember the light bulb popped.
Did it?
Before sound happened. That's what I remember. And then there was that massive blast. All our windows shattered.
Blew every window out, didn't it? On Old Street.
We were literally straight across. I mean, it's amazing that nobody ever died, really. And then I remember...
thought somebody did. I thought bloke who turned lights on, because he came home from pub, he'd left gas on, and he'd flicked switch.
Is that what it... Yeah. I'd heard it was somebody lighting a fire, but I could always ask archives to find out what happened, because there'll be pictures and all sorts of stuff. But that's but one of the things I remember is getting all those like popcorny sweets. I forgot, were they called rainbow rice or something? Yeah. And shop was so badly damaged, smoke damaged, that we ended up getting loads of sweets. And do you not remember that?
Every cloud. I don't know.
We went to stay at Grandma and Granddad's.
How old would we have been? I were only, I thought I were about 5.
No.
1973.
Is that when it happened?
Yeah. Well, we moved to Montbreton when we were around about
10.
7.
No.
Right? We're older than that.
Yeah, I would have been about 8 or 9 when it happened. 7, 8 or 9, something like that.
I think you're wrong.
It's when I used to play piano.
Yeah, when we were at Cemetery Road.
So when I used to play piano, I remember going up. Me and my mum used to catch Pogmo bus outside at Old Art School, which is on just
Yeah,
where
Park Road, bottom of
Park Road. And somebody was gossiping, saying, "Oh, what about that gas explosion?" And I said to my mum, "Will there be a gas explosion?" And she said, "Oh no." And then following week, there must have been. I think there was some faults on that gas pipe. And next week we were up. So I was going to my piano class on Queen's Drive.
I can remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It were awful. Anyway, back to school. So I was quite sporty, still am. And I remember being involved in a lot of stuff at school, trying to keep involved.
You were captain at running team, weren't you?
Captain.
And netball team, weren't
There were a girl I could never beat, and she went to Kirkbork. I tried everything. Tried running fast at the beginning of a race. Tried running slow, keeping back. Everything, I tried it all, and I could never beat her. I can't remember her name, but again, if I look in archives and if I look at some old chronicles, then I'll find out what her name was. But there were me and Jill Pearson.
And whether she ended up going to Olympics.
No, I still see her running around town now.
Do you?
She's still, I think her name was Catherine, but I can't be sure.
Yeah.
But I know she were at Kirkbork.
All right.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And so, there were that, and then there was some kind of sports event at like a multi-sports, and I remember winning that. I won darts.
At school?
At school, yeah. There were a sports event, like it were multi-sports. So there were darts, there were, I can't remember. Maybe it were all like little like a compendium of sports.
It weren't what they call it.
It were house thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
House. We were both in Wilfred's.
Yeah.
Blue, weren't we?
Yeah, and I won that. So quite competitive. I won a cooking prize as well at school, but I'm rubbish at cooking, so that's...
Just on subject of cooking and your year at school, I can also remember I'd have been in first years. Maybe, what first years? Because you're in second years. And when we used to do cooking, you used to take your cooking home in a tin. So they'd fetch a Quality Street tin and put the cakes in or whatever. And we used to go for bus to go home at Athersley South bus. And that were on Main Road, it weren't in school gates. And everybody would just stand there waiting and talking and that. And then when Athersley South bus used to come on, it just be a mass rush for the door. And I can also just remember Ellen Cassan got her tin knocked out of her hand, and it landed on the floor. And I mean, Ellen looked like she was a rough one. At one point, said she was cock at ear, and she was absolutely fuming. She was like a bulldog showing her mouth, and she was trying to pick all this, like, I don't know, that it was just sponge cake or what. And I'm like, that's laughing my head off. I'm like,
I
tears
saw
in my
Ellen on
eyes.
Saturday night, actually. That's funny you should say. I've not seen her in years, and I saw her on Saturday, and she's really well.
See, big into coincidences and
Yeah.
all.
So, did all right at school, and loved art. I used to do any extra curriculum classes that I could, and I used to stay in at lunchtime and finish off my work. So really enjoyed art and sport at school.
Did you have a favourite teacher? Anybody that you warmed to?
I suppose Ian Beasley, because I suppose he weren't much
Mr.
older.
Beasley?
Yeah, he weren't much older than us, really, when I think about it. He can't be, because he's not far older than I am now.
I know, like that. You think back to teachers and you think, I mean, I can remember, we'd have been in first year, and there were Miss Linfoot and another one, and I can remember one of them being 21. So they've only been like 5 years older than us.
I know.
And you thought they were like loads
Really
older.
old.
Yeah.
Fitzy, I liked Fitzy because he
was like an hippie.
well, he was just a really good English teacher, and he kept us interested.
He was laid back, wasn't he? Quite
But he got, and I remember he asked us to do a music review. So he weren't like an ordinary teacher. He was, or a usual teacher, asking you to do like a boring book review. Right, write for English lit, I think it were, write a music review. So I copied something from NME, not thinking for a minute that he were a big fan of NME, handed it in, and he basically scrubbed it out and says, rewrite it, you've copied that word for word. So, yeah, but he was good. The books we read at school weren't traditional. They were on curriculum, but they weren't traditional ones.
So what kind of results did you get at school? You were in top class. So our school, they had A, B, C, and D, didn't they? Or something similar to that.
Yeah, I struggled in exams, but I got through. But I struggled in exams because I think you're right. You either can take an exam, but anything that puts pressure on me, and my boys at same really, anything that, you can get, assessments are great because you can be consistent, but exams that just put you under too much pressure. So I did all right. Yeah.
I agree with that. And then while you were at school, you got yourself a job.
I was desperate for
money.
But my main drive in life has always been to be a bit different, and I wanted a what's it called, a Walkman. I'd seen these Walkmans and I thought, are amazing. I was just so into music, and I thought, are amazing to be able to walk with your music on.
Walking with sound. What is it?
Wired for sound.
Yeah.
And I was desperate for a set of headphones and a cassette. So I went and got myself a job, and I was just under 14, and I went round town on my own.
What, you went going in shops asking?
I went round every shop in town asking if they'd got any Saturday jobs, and I managed to get an interview at Hagenbach's.
I can remember my mum saying that you'd got an interview, and so she
I got a new jacket.
Told us, but she told us, so that probably added a bit of pressure onto you.
Yeah, because my mum can't keep a gob shut. So yeah, I got a new jacket, and I was taken out of school as well. I remember my dad coming for me to go for my interview, and I was the worst subject, and I hated it, and I still do today, is maths. That's my worst subject because I don't see maths as patterns. I see it as a pressurized thing. So before you even start, I worry about it. But so in those days, you had to do everything mentally. You didn't have a tail. Everything was mental arithmetic, and you had to know your dozens and your half a dozens.
When you were serving.
Yeah. So I was given
a bit like them at Aldi now. They
probably
they have to do something like that. They're under pressure, aren't they?
Yeah.
But they paid more per hour.
I had to do a maths test. Luckily, it were arithmetic and not arithmetic, nothing really complicated. So I managed to get through, and I worked there for a few years.
You did, didn't you?
Yeah, and I earned some decent wage, and I got my first Walkman. I saved up, and I probably weren't long before I got one.
You used to go after school as well, didn't you? You just work like Saturdays. You used to go after school.
After school, and because I think they had a number of different units around town, I used to fill in for other people that might have been off as well. But because I had coloured hair, they always used to make me wear a hat.
Why did you have coloured hair, Alison?
Because I wanted to express myself, Simon.
Alison she were a. I don't think you'd have called yourself a new romantic, or did you?
No,
but she
definitely not.
But it was that type of indie,
yeah, indie, avant-garde, whatever you want to call it.
She were a model at one point, weren't you, love?
A model?
Yeah, you used to have you had some modelling photos done at Stand Plus, Stand 2 for hairdressing, for Simon's hairdressing.
I've got a really good friend who's a hairdresser, and I used to be his muse, if you want, his model that he used to practice on, which suited me because I loved having my hair done, and I loved anything that made my mum and dad upset. So I would have different coloured hair, so he used to practice on me while he were training. So yeah, he still does it to this day.
And just to explain, if anybody don't know what Hagenbach's is like an old
Greg's. Really, isn't it? Yeah,
Greg's,
Greg.
Yeah, so
I'd be surprised if they took them over.
I think they did. Yeah, I think they did. So that's what that was. How hard or easy did you find working at the start? You know, when you first went from being a schoolgirl to your first day in that job, what it sort of, I don't know, did you find it a massive change, or did you find it sort of really hard going, you know, hours and stuff like that? And did you get tired?
I think at first I were really enthusiastic and I just wanted to get paid, and I did what they wanted me to do, and the one thing I did remember, I mean, I were only 13, so it's really young when you think about it, but I didn't really fit in. So there'd be women that are probably my age, if not a bit younger. I used to make sandwiches. That's what I used to do first on a morning, and I would make egg mayonnaise and stuff like that. So I would make all the ingredients because it were all fresh. And there'd be two women talking about like their married life, and and the sex life, and it was just like not what I wanted to hear. And then I'd go upstairs and which was like serving, and I'd be happy serving, but I didn't want to engage with any staff because they weren't my age, so it were really odd. And you were always treated like, you know, Saturday girl. But they were kind to me, and I still to this day wash my windows with vinegar and wipe them down with brown paper, because that's the only way that you can get grease off the windows, and that's what I used to have to do. That was one of my jobs.
Jack and Jill, vinegar and brown paper.
Yeah. Newspaper, actually, yeah.
What hours and what wages? Can you remember?
It weren't much. I want to say £4.50 for a day, maybe £7. But I also had a babysitting job, which I got £5 for. I can't really remember.
Your job though, it weren't cash in hand, was it? It went through. You got like a slip and everything, didn't you?
You got a slip. You got a brown paper envelope with cash in it, and it had a slip in it. So it were done properly.
I can remember it getting all that, but all other jobs that you knew people were doing back then were all like kind of cash ones, weren't they?
All my friends were working at market. So Julie would be working for that jeweller. I can't remember his name. Andrew worked for George the Sock Man.
Well, I worked for Pat's Pants at one point, which I'll probably tell in my interview when Gav does it. But Pat's Pants, Pat's for Pants.
Pat's for Pants, and they're still there as well.
I know, and then years later, when I was plastering, I ended up doing some skimming at her house.
Yeah.
And she's still going.
So it were a bit odd. And I mean, that story of my life not fitting in anyway, so not fitting in with many people. But then as I got older, because I stayed there until I were about 18, I think. And as I got older, and me and Simon would be clubbing, like I wouldn't get any sleep. So I'd literally be going out Friday night and going straight to work.
Stop out. Did you stop out? So what, subjects that you did at school, what made you kind of choose subjects that you wanted to do?
One, interest, and then to challenge myself, which were a bad idea really, because I took chemistry, which was a total bad idea. I didn't even get chemistry O level. It was just, but yeah, just that really.
What were you good at? What were your best subjects?
Art. Good at art. Sport.
I'm just trying to think of what they called it. Mrs.
Avril. Yeah,
Mrs.
she was an
Avril.
Interesting character.
She was
but
about
she was
100
good.
when I was at school.
I know.
She must have been knocking on a bit.
Yeah, she might not have been.
Grey hair. Yeah, she got grey hair, so everybody.
She might not have been, but she were all right. She was a bit stern, but she was all right.
I remember my first ever day at school. That were our art class, were our form.
Yeah.
So that was first class I ever went into, and first thing that I ever saw, I ever remember from first day at school, was that poster, Eddie Grant, from his album.
Yeah.
I just couldn't get over it.
Yeah. Well, that's Mrs. Avril. She would have had that. She'd have loved Eddie Grant, and I'd love to speak to her. She'll be dead now, though. She might not be, but Yeah. Yeah.
Can you remember careers lesson when you were at school? And what kind of advice did you get off them? Mr.
Sims. Simpson.
Simpson, yeah.
Yeah. I do remember him. He were a technical drawing teacher, and I think he were quite clever. But I don't really remember what they said to me. I don't remember, but I do remember. And again, there's probably put me in good stead for the rest of my life. So we had a deputy head called Mr. Nesworthy, who didn't mince his words.
Nezzy.
And when I used to go to school with my coloured hair, which was frowned upon, he once said to me, Alison Cooper, he says, where do you think you're going to get a job? Or it said something like, you're not going to get a job with that colour hair. And it were more determined then that I would get a job that suited me as a person rather than, conform.
Do you remember things like that? Little comments and stuff like that. So,
I remember it to this day, yeah.
So what did you do once you left school and then went to, did your egg and backs thing? What were your next venture after that?
So I ended up following my love of art and ended up eventually working for Laura Ashley.
How did you get that job? Because it weren't in Barnsley. There were no Laura Ashley in Barnsley, were there?
No, it were for a display girl, as they called it then. It's now visual merchandising. It were part-time. It were in Leeds. I wrote off for it. I had to go and have an interview. I did and I think they gave me a task to do, and that's how I got that job.
What, part of interview and a task?
Yeah, like doing a display. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, because it were it were window dressing. I don't know if you remember, Laura Ashley at that time used to have the bays, the fabric bays and the tile bays, and it were mainly furnishings. Well, even down to garments. They all had they were like giant wardrobes with outdoors on, and they all had like a display above them. So sometimes there might be tiling. So I'd have to do some tiling in back at bay or wallpapering to show wallpapers off, or I might have to do some. But it were constant displays because that's how people saw furnishings. I'd always had a love of doing furnishings, I think.
Did you not work in shop first, or would you go straight to doing that job?
It was display job.
All right.
But you were called to work on shop floor. But ultimately, that's what you were there to do. And I remember going to, they had a regional visual merchandiser that used to come round and make sure that everything were all right. And he came to do Christmas window because it were a city centre store, and he wanted a violin. And we didn't have a violin because they used to use all like props, antiques and props in their displays then. So we went off to Yorkshire Television to their prop department, and I remember walking through
on Kirkstall Road.
Yeah, I remember walking through 321 Studios and Dusty Bim being there, and we went in.
Worth a few quid now.
Yeah, went in prop department, and he got his a few violins actually. It looked nice, that window. And then when Laura Ashley opened at Sheffield, Sheffield City Centre, I moved there.
That place where they moved to, was it Orchard Square?
No, it Pinston Street.
Was it?
On a corner, we're an old provincial building.
All right.
Provincial Insurance. Prudential, sorry, not provincial.
Yeah.
Really beautiful old building. And then I went full time. I did display and I did ordering, furnishing orders, but I'd always had a love of doing.
And that kind of progressed to someone.
Well, what happened then was I put this all down to being in right place at right time, really. So when
thing is though, there's being at right place at the right time and saying it were lucky, but you were prepared for it as well through your job, weren't
Oh
you?
and just being enthusiastic. But I do believe it's like it were being in right place at right time.
Yeah.
So what happened was they were opening a new store just outside of Sheffield in a home base at that time. They used to do Laura Ashley concessions in Sainsbury's home bases. It was like part of the contract. And they were opening this up, and it was there I met Sonia Novak and Gordon. I can't remember his name. That's awful. And the team from Shop Openings, and I managed to take them around. We were looking for props. We were painting at that time. There were a big focus on a collection called the Charleston collection, which was inspired by the Charleston farmhouse and the Bloomsbury set. So Vanessa Bell and Duncan Grant and Roger Fry and all them. And we were having to paint some scenery for these displays, and I ended up painting some scenery staying behind, but mainly because I enjoyed it. I didn't have any interest in, we're just helping this team out to open this shop. And just before we opened it, someone said to me that there was going to be one team were leaving. So I just had a quick word with the manager, and they said, "Oh well, applications will be good." So I had to look out for applications. But I think because I'd worked with them, took them round antique shops, I were doing job, showing them how to do it.
Yeah.
So and that was best job I've ever done.
What doing your
shop openings?
Oh, shop openings.
Yeah, when I worked on Laura Ashley shop openings team.
I can remember. Yeah, I can remember that. You used to
absolutely
go all over country,
loved
didn't
it.
You went all over country doing it.
Yeah, yeah. So for a young girl or young woman, what were I, 23, 22, 23, something like that, I'd be going out shopping for props, doing antique shops, antique buys, interiors for new shops with like a team. There were, I had a manager, but we'd meet in Leicester. We'd talk about like what the shop would be. So I worked in Bromley, Regent Street, Norfolk.
You worked with shop fitters as well, like so.
Yeah, there were a gang of shop fitters, and we would order all the stock in. So all these elements of display, doing shop orderings, all seemed to just fit together. Yeah. And we stayed all over country. One of my jobs were to book hotels, so there were no kind of
travel lodge.
There weren't travel lodges. No, we had a decent amount per night,
yeah,
and then you had your per diem, which is, I think, your daily rate for expenses. It were great, and it were my responsibility to find the hotel. So what I had I think it were £100 a night then. I remember it, which were a good amount in 80s. But it were hard work. You needed somewhere nice to go back to, and it were my job to get us a nice hotel. So I used to work with a business travel agency who used to book all the hotels. That were great. I loved it. I loved every minute of that job, but it were hard work.
So how come you went from that to interior design, didn't you?
Yeah. So I'll just say this. You asked me what best advice were, and it were then when being a young sort of irresponsible young woman, and I remember being in, it were a home base we were opening, maybe in Chichester, I can't remember where, and I walked through this canteen, and there were a fire extinguisher not fitted properly, and I remember mentioning it to my manager and saying to her, "Oh well, it's not our problem," like that. And she turned around and she said, "Alison, it's your responsibility to make sure this shop is up and running. So if you've walked past it, everything is your responsibility in this building." And I always remember, everything is a responsibility to everybody.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah, it
that.
is. Yeah. I say it to my kids as well. So I went on. So as part of the Laura Ashley thing, you could see from the programme of new shops being opened that there wasn't going to be anything, happening in like 2 years. So you
They
thought
weren't expanding that much.
they were expanding too much, spent too much money, and then we hit a recession, and therefore they put a stop on opening shops. So, but during one of these shop openings, I came across a service called Home Styling, and they were in sort of quite well-to-do areas. So there was a couple in London, there was one in Oxford, and that's who I worked with. And I can't remember, maybe there was one in Harrogate, I can't remember. There was 6 of them in total, and there was a rumour that, it was an amazing, lucrative business for Laura Ashley. One, it was elite to have a personal shopper go into your home, to be an interior designer, take care of all your ordering, everything.
And it were at that time when interior design programs were on telly,
Yeah.
and it were massive, weren't they?
Yeah, they were just coming in. I think when I started, it were just starting. Yeah, and people were just taking a bit more notice. But kind of the personal shopper, interior designer, somebody who's got an eye for busy people, for someone who hasn't got any confidence, it were really taking off, and especially in these well-to-do areas as well. So there was a rumour that I'd heard that they might be starting it off as a proper service. Like when I say proper service, at that time it was just in like 6 shops, but they were going to roll it out to a few more. But also I got made redundant at that time. But somebody I worked with said to me, keep your eye open. There's going to be something happening with this service. We think you'd be good. But it took 2 years.
I can remember.
Yeah.
What were you doing in that 2 years?
Well, because of that advice, I'd listened to him.
You seemed to be in a bit of no man's land, didn't you? I can remember that time. You just seemed to be in a bit of no man's land, waiting. You were still waiting for this.
Yeah, I was waiting, but at the same time, I was getting experience. So what I did was I managed to do some show homes for a company called George Longdon's.
That's it. Yeah. I forgot about that.
I did some window dressing for Laura Ashley, believe it or not. Because they'd got rid of everybody and visual merchandising, they'd put it out to an agency in London, and I ended up doing, and I got really well paid for that, but it wasn't often. I did some window displays, some catalogue shots for Rowan Yarns and a company called AIS in Solihull, and that was with my then manager, or my old manager, Sonia Novak. I could have followed Sonia to Body Shop, but around that same time, that's when this opportunity came up that they were going to roll out this home styling service.
Yeah.
And that's where it all started for me, really, afterwards. But I think it, again, coming back to circumstance and me going with my gut instinct and knowing what's right, and knowing where I need to put my efforts in, and just having a bit of a plan.
Yeah. So you did interior design for how many years did you do that? And you see, every time I went to your house, you seemed to have rolls of material.
I know, I can't remember. So it was, well, what happened, I had a brilliant career with home styling, as it was called. There was just 10 of us, and I did really well, and I ended up becoming a senior designer. I worked in Japan. I worked all over the country, really.
I forgot about that at all.
Yeah, I worked.
You did,
I did. I worked for a few months in Japan.
What were you doing there? Were you opening a Laura Ashley in Japan?
No, no. So basically, the home styling got revamped, and it became the design service, and it was doing really well, very successful in England and UK. And the Malaysians really loved this idea. that, you know, somebody could go into people's houses and encourage sales, I suppose. But in this country, it wasn't seen that way. It was seen as a personal service. Eventually, it became a really sales-orientated business, but it didn't start out like that. But the Malaysians really liked this idea, so they wanted to trial it in their stores. But the only problem is, in Japan, people don't like you in their houses, and also they don't wallpaper, so they pin it up. They don't have curtains because they get there's too many earthquakes, so it didn't quite work. But we were there, or I was there as part of a team to try and talk to the managers of the Japanese stores to take this service on. I can't remember if they actually got on, but at that time they were the Malaysian franchise who owned the Japanese stores were paying for the visual merchandisers to go out and the designers as well.
Was it first class when you were flying?
No,
No.
No, it was good though, really good experience. I mean, it were an amazing experience because I went as a worker and not as a visitor or
Right.
a traveller. So yeah, I used to have to get up, make my way into work. I had a desk in like Tokyo City, and ended up going to a couple of large cities as well on the bullet, and then they flew me back. Really good
Brilliant.
experience, yeah.
I've been once for about 3 days on my way back from Australia.
Yeah.
I can't remember what city it was, but that'd have been that one, when I went. That was my only fear. Every building were just like had cracks all over them, and like marble floors, just great big crack. Even airport, can you remember? In airports, I don't know, them escalators, and they have them big springs on them, so that for when it moves.
I
Can you
can't
remember them?
remember. No, I think I were a bit dazed when I got there, but
I think it was Narita Airport where we went.
oh, that's Tokyo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that they're really polite and really courteous and hospitable, and they took me on this tour, and they took me to this skyscraper for my lunch. It was so high that they'd got first aid to paramedics to a woman, she'd collapsed, and they thought it'd be really nice for me to sit by window and I don't look out.
That I have sympathy with you, because
Yeah.
when that's what happened to me when I went to Burj Khalifa
Yeah.
with kids. I could have, if I could have got on all fours and crawled round, I
Yeah.
would have done. But because I was with kids, I was trying to.
Yeah, be brave.
Yeah, but as soon as I came out at lift, and then we went through the door, and I felt outside sky. You could hear noise of it being outside. I just started falling to me right.
Yeah.
I was like, and that what window. So
Yeah.
window were on me right, and I was like, so I was hanging onto a pillar, and then I was like, kids were just rolling. They were like, Dad, you wanted to, you keep saying to us to get out of your comfort zone. Come on, walk round. I'm like, just don't look at me. I'm just trying to get, and then you'd have to wait an hour to get down, and it was like a zigzag queue, and and every time you came back, you were next at window.
Oh no.
I know, it was a nightmare.
I think it were about 75 floors. I don't know if that's high, but 75.
Sounds it.
And it didn't take very long to get up. Anyhow, that was a good experience. So, I had Milo, and then I went job share with a good friend of mine, and we ended up. I mean, just to say, the service got bigger and bigger and bigger. So I was more my first role as a designer was in Nottingham. I used to travel to Nottingham every day for 3 years.
The right track. It's like an hour and a half, and if you're in
Yeah.
thingy,
Junction 29's awful. But not only that, the area I covered were massive. It went right up to Leeds, because I think there must have been someone in Harrogate. So that we shared it, and then it went right down to Kettering and across to Peterborough. But it were great. I
no, but travelling,
I were young though, it didn't
Yeah.
matter. And I loved doing it, so it didn't matter.
and then you
Then but then my area I ended up going to Leeds and then Sheffield, because there were more and more designers getting put in. And then I had my first Milo, and then when I had my second, I decided to go on my own, because it was tough running that even part-time.
You'd been doing it a bit on your own, hadn't you?
A little bit.
Yeah, trying to, yeah. And then you set up
The White Room.
The White Room.
Yeah, the White Room,
the
interior
White Room.
design. Yeah.
I think somebody nicked that off you, didn't they?
I think a few people did. It's a really good title. But then
There's a shop in Leeds, isn't there? They call that the White Room.
Yeah,
they?
probably. But it's to do with like pure noise. White Room, a room that has pure noise. So I just thought it were a really good title for a base. But I did really well, and everything I'd learnt up to then, like the design service had taught me how to run my own business. They were brilliant, Laura Ashley, to work with. I had so much training on, running management, managing people, just really good to work for. So yeah, that sort of fell into place to run my own business. So then I got loads of accounts with different fabric companies, and I was doing really well.
And how did you find from working for somebody, and then having your own business? What did you find that there were a big difference having to do your own accounts and all that kind of thing?
Oh yeah, I mean, but you've got more flexibility, so where it's harder to keep on top of your accounts and your accounting, the positives were that I could spend more time at home with the kids, and that's what the aim was. And I had my own money, and I wasn't earning as much, nowhere near as much, but after about 5 years it sort of started to pick up, and I had some regular clients as well. I used to work for builders doing specs on their buildings. I used to do a lot of soft furnishings, but I had some regular clients that used to come back to me.
And then you kind of closed that down, didn't you?
Well, it stopped because there was a recession.
Yeah.
2007, 2008, I think. I maintained it for a while, and then it became a bit.
I always used to think you should have set a kind of shop up in your basement. Alison used to live in this massive house on Victoria Street, and she did it from top to bottom, and it was absolutely gorgeous. But basement never got done, and I think them that bought it off you did basement out, didn't they? But you could have had kind of an office down there, your own.
Yeah.
And that'd have been ideal, but
it would have been. Well, it weren't meant to be, because actually.
You what, Mum?
You what?
That's what my mother says all the time.
Oh.
Yeah, you weren't meant to be.
Well, I'd moved at that point anyway, but even so, I'd got to a point where it sounds awful, but the amount people were spending on their furnishings, I saw it just became a bit distasteful and uncomfortable to me then. And I started to question a lot about, equality, and started to have a bit of a conscience, really. And that's when I wanted to do something, transferring all them skills that I'd learnt and taught myself, and wanted to do something for me. And that's when I started to look at exhibition work.
So how did you get into doing exhibition work?
I volunteered at the Civic with my friend David.
So this is a lesson for anybody that is wanting to get into work. Sometimes the best avenue to go up is to do that work for free. If it's a job that you really want, do it for free for so long. I mean, like when you were saying on about when you got your job at Hagenbach's, you'd have probably worked there for free to start with, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I'm a big believer in voluntary work anyway, for a number of reasons. But when I was going through interview process, when I had made redundant from Laura Ashley, and then I was approached to apply for the design job, I still had to go through an interview process, and I I was confident, but I couldn't be 100% confident that I would get it, because the caliber of people that would be applying I didn't know. So for about 2 months beforehand, I went to work at Wakefield home base on a weekend for free, and I just volunteered to get an idea of what the products were. And
job that you were going for, just explain where it was based and what it were at Design Centre, wasn't it, which used to be old Wigfalls something like that. Is that where it was?
No,
Is
they
it
went
different?
Well, it was that, but they went to it was when they were opening up at the Civic.
Did they go from Civic to there?
They went from the Design Centre North to the gallery at the Civic. Yeah.
But that Design Centre North, what used to be where Wigfalls were, wasn't it? It was across from.
No, it was Electricity.
Yeah, that one.
YEB.
Yeah, Wigfalls were there as well.
Were it?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember.
YEB, and because I think I can remember you gave me a ticket for opening one at exhibitions, and I can't remember what it was, because I think about 2000.
No. Oh, you mean
Yeah.
At Design Centre North? Yeah. Well, I didn't. I mean, I used to go in a lot, but and I always used to think, oh, I'd love to know how these are all put together and how do you do this, and actually it's really similar to what it's very similar to what I do while we're doing, but in a different using different mediums if you want. But when David was opening the Civic, I asked him if I could go and volunteer, and that's when I went to volunteer, and I just used to do 1 day a week. And I think at the beginning I might have done a few more because I just really enjoyed it. And then I was offered a part-time job. I think it was 16 hours paid.
Yeah.
And obviously I took that. And I learnt loads from David, absolutely loads. He's a real visionary and a really interesting person to work for, but also so knowledgeable as well. And it literally was transferring everything that I'd ever done, but in a different concept, putting exhibitions together. So my love of art had all come back round.
So there you go. So you could tell you were a creative when you were at school, and then obviously it transpired into this job going forward. Well, if you look at Laura Ashley and
that's
what
all
you
I've
did
ever
there,
done.
Yeah, it's all been creative stuff.
All creative stuff, and it's been a really good career. So then, what happened was I was offered. No, I wasn't. I found out there was a freelance job going at Barnsley Museums. I'd made some contacts there, and I applied, and everything you do with the council has to be done properly. You have to apply through a proper tender process. So I wasn't even sure I was doing it right, but I did it, and I got my first commission from them. After a couple of commissions, I decided to leave the Civic because I felt there was a conflict of interest, and I took a massive risk because it were, although it were only 2 days a week, and I was still learning. So I ended up doing curatorial work, and then when that
is that when you did your thing with sheep?
Oh no, that was something different. That was just me.
Well, that not that same
being creative
around that time.
Oh yeah, so I did a project at YSP. So I suppose working
Yorkshire Sculpture Park for anybody that's.
I suppose working at the gallery, it brought back that creativity that I'd kind of lost. All my creativity were in doing interiors, spatial awareness, soft furnishings, curtains, you name it. But sort of working at the Civic, I was amongst artists, and so there was a lot of I was being really creative in that way. So I was doing quite a bit of drawing back then as well, and doing little art projects. And I came across I went on a walk, and there were all these sheep following one another, and I said to a person that I was walking with, I said, oh, it'd be really funny if they were all like, they'd all got letters on them, because they mark them up. And I put together a bit of a brief and approached Cannon Hall Farm and just did a bit of a tester for a bigger project at Yorkshire Sculpture Park, which was called Right to Roam. And I sprayed 300 sheep with words, but the words had been researched of the land that the sheep roam on at YSP.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
And then when they were every time they were stood together, they made up different words.
Yeah,
and
it didn't quite work out like that. It worked really well at Cannon Hall, but unfortunately, that summer that I did it, it was really dry, and the sheep just ended up scratching it all off in the dust. So it didn't. Yeah, but it got a lot of interest anyway. Yeah.
So then you moved forward, and you ended up at Cooper Art Gallery, or were you at Civic and then did you go back to Civic and then to Cooper?
No, I didn't go back to Civic. I really sort of decided to try and work at the council, and there was an opportunity came up that was for a project officer to help develop a project out at Cannon Hall. And I really enjoyed that. It was called Parks for People, and it was looking at the development of the renovation of the parks and parkland. So I worked for that a year, and then one of my colleagues left in collections. So one of the curators left. I applied for that job and I got it, and that was just I think it was 30 hours a week, and now I do 37 because it's that busy.
Brilliant.
I know. So highlight of my career is working at the British Museum, I think, on an exhibition called Pushing Paper, which was 2017 project, and it ends in April when I go up to Orkney for the opening.
Orkney?
Going to Orkney.
That's
28th of March.
Off your list, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've never been there, have you?
No, I've never been that far north. Edinburgh's about far. Yeah. So I've worked with the national galleries. I mean, sometimes it is a pinch myself job, but I do, and that's why I do believe I've gone with my instinct. Anything that's not felt right, I've not done. Anything that's felt right, I've done. I've took a leap of faith, I suppose, sometimes, but it's felt right. I got an amazing job with Next, Did you know? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I forgot about that. Have we skipped that?
I mean, that was just so well paid and so amazing. I could not believe I'd got it, to be honest. I just thought I'd go along for interview. I don't know why. It were at a time when I really did need, and I thought you could work from home. I thought the agency had told me there was some home working, but that was doing something really similar to shop openings, but leading on it, which I could have done without no problem at all. The biggest problem was a 4-hour round trip, and that's on a good day. That's on a Sunday morning to Leicester. I mean, just getting out of Enderby took 45 minutes, so nightmare.
Travelling is just not,
yeah.
It won't suit me anyway.
I did
go so far, and that's it.
I accepted job, didn't I? And I did 2 days, unfortunately, and I were crying on way home once because I wanted to be home with kids, and I'm not a career person. I've been really lucky and accepted opportunities or chances, whatever you want to call it, but it's always been the boys have always been my priority.
And now they're getting older, you can do what you want. What's next for with your job that you've got now? Have you got any projects coming up that you're excited about?
Yeah, some I can't talk about really.
Can we get an exclusive?
No, I can at Easter.
She'll tell me when we turn.
I'm not.
But she don't trust her own brother.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous. I've got a mouth like a torn pocket.
Yeah, and what have I got? I've got working with Salisbury Centre on a Henry Moore exhibition. I can tell you that. I'm working with a fabulous artist, glass artist, called Charlie Murphy and Selena Ray, who heads stem cell research at
Smashing
UCL. Yeah. That's called Brains in a Dish. That's amazing. What else? I mean, I am programmed. I can't leave any time before 2025 because I've got things in my diary to 2025, but I'll be 60 then.
Do you all do out with Wentworth? Is it council do out with Wentworth?
Which one?
Woodhouse, Wentworth Woodhouse.
They do as part of Elsica and Rotherham. It was called Wee Great Place. Yeah.
Can't believe it. I don't know if you watch Ant Deck. Do you watch it on a Saturday?
No.
Can't believe it. It came on and they do a thing where they do a rainbow. So that they do these lights flying up in air. And we always said to our Izzy, have a look out the window, see if you can see it. And so it comes on at the beginning of the programme, Fleury's for doing it, and this building in background. And I says it's a stately home. And then I says, I bet they do Wentworth one day, one of these weeks, they'll Wentworth. I didn't recognise it. And end of programme, it were Wentworth, but they'd got, it were at other side. So, side that we normally see, longest bit.
So they were in
they were out,
stables?
Yeah, no, they were out other side. So obviously there's two frontages to houses, isn't there? So that, we normally see longest one.
Yeah.
Well, it was other bit. And it wasn't dark and it was just lit up a bit.
Yeah.
And then they went, we're at Wentworth Woodhouse, and we're like, we'd have probably gone and tried to get on, because she can win something, but just for our Izzy.
Oh, but, that'd have been, you'd have got here. You'd have got there in 20 minutes.
Yeah, we'd have probably won it, but,
Yeah.
I bet.
No, I wished I'd have come to this sort of sector before now, but as it turns out,
Can't have any regrets, though, can you?
Oh, there's no regrets. I just need to be able to sustain. And it's a busy job. It's absolutely brilliant job. And I love the people that I'm working with. They're so supportive. I've probably got one of the best officers in town. I'm just so lockdown. We had to come out of Westgate Plaza, which is that big glass box. You couldn't have your own desk there. It were hot desking, which is obviously you can't do that now.
With COVID, yeah.
Yeah. So trying to get back into town. We have a beautiful room in the town hall, which is basically my view is straight down Regent Street.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So, what do you do outside work? What's your hobbies, or not so much hobbies, but apart from looking after kids, obviously.
Well, I don't have to look after them really now. Like yesterday, I went to a gallery. Don't always go till I like music.
You still do a bit of running, don't you?
No, I retired from running.
Oh, biking then, because you
cycling.
You got a
I did,
gorgeous
which
bike for Christmas.
We can't get it out at garage. But no, I've retired
is it still
from
in there?
Yeah, can't get it out.
I forgot. I couldn't get my mum's got his doors broken. Guys that came to do it, apparently they can't find a part. So 3 months in it. 3 months it's been like that.
Yeah, my Christmas present's still in there because we can't get it out. I've got a foot injury, so I had to make a decision whether I were going to go carry on running and hurt my feet or just stop. And I've been running for most of my adult life, from being 11, and I don't think I've done too bad. I've done some good races and I'm happy. So now I do yoga quite frequently, and I like listening to music. I enjoy watching films, cinema. Just enjoy life, really.
If a young Alison Cooper and yourself went for a coffee to one of the big coffee places, or even a little niche coffee place, which what would conversation go like, or what would you say to them?
I don't know. It's really funny because I do a bit of meditation, and one at meditation was meeting your younger self, and I've never thought of that. I've never thought about that before, and it's funny you've asked that question. It's never occurred to me what it sort of were. It were kind of like a positive meditation, and it were about giving your little you a hug, and I thought, oh God, it's quite, I know, it's really odd, isn't it? But thought of it. So I don't know. I'm not sure what I'd say to myself. I think I'd probably say stick with your gut instinct, because I think that's a really good.
Because it's always done right for you.
Well, it has, and I say that to the kids, and I mean, there's a few things I would say to on a personal level, but we're talking about career. But avoid this person. But no, even that, that's fine as well, because out of that I got 3 amazing young men.
How would a young person starting out today get to do what you do? What sort of path would they have to follow?
What you mean, working in heritage?
Formula?
Working in heritage, or
getting to sort of do what you do.
I think. Well, if I think about Milo, who's gone a similar route, he's a product designer in industry, and he's working in glass industry at the minute.
Creative.
Yeah, really creative. Always.
So good. Linus's and Gus's as well, aren't they?
I'm not sure about. Well, yeah, no, Gus's. Gus is creative. He was making things yesterday for his girlfriend, which is dead sweet. And Linus is creative in another way. He's really good at spatial design, actually.
His career, area that he's going into is going to be massive in the next 20, 30 years. And
he knows that. And he's
which I was saying to my mum the other day, foresight for him to see that's like brilliant. When we were all thinking, he weren't bothered about doing it, and then now it's like sort of foresight, and he's.
I think. Well, we'll not talk about that. There's stuff going off there, but anyway. With Milo, what I've kind of, I've always said to him, do something you enjoy, because I've always ended up doing something enjoying. I think we saw my mum and dad doing stuff they did not enjoy, especially my dad being a miner and my granddad being a miner, and coming from that, seeing all these people working so hard, and for what, to get ill in old age.
I mean, I know my granddad when he retired, and my dad, both in 50, weren't they?
My granddad they were both 55. You could retire at 55 then.
Is that what it was, 55? I thought he stopped at 50, my dad, and then went working at Stackhouse. He left mine at 50.
Well, it was when his pit closed down, which would have been 93. What, 93? I can't remember, but 93.
Yeah, and then he went to work at Stackhouse at Ardsley as caretaker.
Yeah.
Because he was scared of not...
paying his stamp.
Scared of getting done and for not working.
Yeah. But anybody who wants to get into my industry, it's a little bit... I think it's all different now. But volunteering is a recognised career path in its own right now. So it's worth getting involved with museums or galleries on a voluntary level, and even that's really difficult to get into. You have to be interviewed, and but it does go down a long way for your UCAS points and your entry into university. But I think it's just a case of, I mean, I don't think I ever forced myself on people. I know I didn't, actually, because I weren't that sort of person. I think I just worked really hard, and I knew that I enjoyed it, so I wanted to do the best as I possibly could. Whilst I enjoyed it, I've never had to feel like I've wanted to leave a job. I think I've just been really, really lucky.
That's brilliant, that, when you like that, yeah. Brilliant.
And I've always said to the boys, do something you enjoy. And even from a young age, and I think with Milo, he were mad on Lego, and I used to say, somebody's had to design that. Somebody's actually physically had to put pen to paper and design that, and that could be you, if that's what you want to do.
That seems to have stuck with him, yeah.
Yeah, he's gone on to do. His first live project's just been produced, so.
He did them climbing things with colours. That was brilliant.
That were his final project, weren't it, for his degree?
Fantastic.
I know. And so many different colour blindnesses. So it's just, his first bottle at design is with Tanqueray. Is it Tanqueray?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. It's
That's
good.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, Alison, all I can do now is thank you for coming and being my guest on Damp Sam's show. And I just hope that it's not been too testing and trying.
No, it's been all right, actually. Yeah,
Well,
thank you.
We'll wrap that up. Right, Alison,
Okay.
thank you.
All
And
right.
that's it.
See ya.